Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gene's Reviews. Reviews from a regular dude, where I do trailer reactions, I react to YouTube videos, I review YouTube channels. Occasionally, I'll review a movie, but really, I just do whatever the hell I want. First of all, I don't know what the hell happened, but for some reason, the audio is not with the video on this. Hopefully, when I upload it on YouTube, it will be, but if not, I really don't want to do it over again because I like the way that this one turned out. But I apologize if it's that way. Just close your eyes and listen to me, I guess. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome to Gene's Reviews down in the basement. I had some people say that they wanted me to talk a little bit about a paranormal experience that I had years ago, and I did a video on it it's probably been over a year ago, but I thought I'd do another one in a little bit more detail, and I'll mention some other things that have happened to, like, my sister, my mother, not all these are bad things. The first one that I'm going to talk about wasn't a good experience at all, and started off, would have been around 1982. My parents had moved to, my parents and my sister had moved to Yuma, Arizona. I was in a summer theater at the time, and I couldn't leave because I had to finish the season out at the summer theater. So I moved in with a friend of mine, and it was just like for a month. I was going to stay for a month and then go to Yuma and work for my dad. And we rented the movie. This is back when they had VHS. They didn't have DVD or anything like that. We rented the movie The Exorcist, and we didn't even have a VHS player. So this is back when you could rent the VHS players too. And we rented a VHS player and hooked it up. Rented the movie The Exorcist, and bumped my camera there. There was a guy that I had worked for, and he came over and was watching it with us. I couldn't finish it. I actually got up and left. I couldn't handle it. It was too much for me, and he was always a little bit different. I think he got into that kind of thing, and I think he got into it in a really unhealthy way. I started getting real interested in all that stuff, all the satanic stuff. Not that I wanted to do anything with it, but it just fascinated me. So I was too naive, I think, to handle it. And a guy at work had given me a cassette tape. And this was when backmasking was all over the place, which now that I look back on it, I think it's kind of ridiculous, where they would play the rock songs backwards and they'd have the satanic messages and all that stuff. And the cassette tape that I borrowed was put out by the church. I'm not going to say what church, but it was put out by the church. And they would play these rock songs backwards, and you'd hear these messages, and I did hear them. I was hearing the stuff that they said you would be hearing and things like that. One of the songs was from a group, which is really surprising to me because they were like one of my favorite groups, and they're a soft rock group called Styx. But I guess the title of the group, Styx, the river Styx, Styx, is supposedly like the river in hell, I think. But it was a song off of one of their albums called Snowblind. And I don't remember what the message was backwards, but it was sung by James Young. He's the lead guitar player. He usually didn't sing most of the stuff that the group put out. He just played the lead guitar, but he sang that song. And I remember that was one of them. And I don't remember what the other songs were or anything. But anyways, long story short, I got really interested in it, fascinated with it. And I was laying in bed one night. This was probably a week or two after we'd watched that movie, The Exorcist, and I left and I couldn't deal with it. My roommate didn't watch it either. I think we ended up just shutting it off. But late one night, my roommate worked graveyard shift. It was just a little tiny apartment, so we only had one bedroom, but we had two separate beds. Not let's not get weird here, okay? But I worked in the mornings. He worked in the graveyard shift, so I would sleep and get up and go to work. But this was a weekend, so we were both there. And I had a Walkman. This is back when they had Walkmans with cassette tapes and everything. No DVDs, nothing like that. We had cassette tapes. And I had this cassette tape of the group Styx because they're my favorite group. And I was laying there in bed. And now that I look back on it, it's kind of like that movie, the Amityville 2, The Possession. But I was laying in bed with the headphones on, and I was just listening to that cassette tape, and the song Renegade was playing, which is one of my favorite songs by Styx. And I kind of dozed off a little bit, and I remember waking up because I thought I heard my name being called. And I looked over at my roommate, and he was asleep, so it wasn't him. And I rewound the tape, played it again, and at that point I heard my name again, that in my song, and it was like a really high pitched. It wasn't a human sounding thing, just saying my name, Gene. And I woke him up, and he was actually a returned missionary. And I asked him to listen to it, and he said no, he didn't want to listen to it. It creeped him out too much. He wouldn't do it. So I listened to it a couple more times, and I kept hearing my name being called, plain as day. So I took the cassette tape because it freaked me out too much. It scared me, and I actually tore it up. I ruined it, broke it, and threw it in the garbage. And I took my Walkman, set it on the nightstand and everything, and went back to sleep. And I couldn't have been asleep for very long, but something woke me up, and I felt something starting at my toes, and it shot all the way through my whole body, like something was trying to take me over. I don't know how else to explain it. There's no other way to explain it. Something was trying to take me over because I got so involved in all this stuff. And I want to say right off the bat, I don't believe this can happen to you unless you let it happen to you. And I got too involved in it, and I made it happen to me, basically. And it went all the way through my whole body. And I remember screaming, and my roommate waking up, and him jumping on top of me and shaking me. And I remember him even slapping me in the face, shaking me and slapping me, trying to get me out of it and everything. We were both crying, so he was feeling something too. He got me into the kitchen, and we were sitting in this little kitchen, and it kept happening over and over and over. It would come on really, really strong, and it would I'd fight it as much as I could, and then it would stop. And then it would come on again, and then it would stop. And it just kept doing that over and over and over. He got on the phone, and he called the church. They sent over a couple of guys from the church, and they gave me a blessing. They said that when they was walking up the street, like a couple blocks away, they weren't far away, they said that they could hear the screaming, like a couple blocks away. This is probably like 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And they gave me the blessing and everything. They wanted me to pray. I had never prayed in my life. I had no idea what to even say, so they told me what to say. And I did. And that early morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't go back to sleep. There was no way I was going to stay there again. So we went driving around. And I called the owner of the playhouse that I was involved in the summer theater, because he was really big in the church. and he had me come up to his house. It's like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and he got me in his living room, and he gave me a blessing also. And after that happened, I never stayed in that house again. And my roommate did. He stayed there. But that night he didn't. For a couple nights, we both stayed at my aunt's house. He slept on the floor, or on one couch in the living room. I slept on the other. And yeah, he went back. I went back only to get my stuff. And like I was saying in the last video, I would walk into the house and grab something, and I'd feel that feeling come over me again. So I'd run out of the house and put it in my car, and then stand out there by my car for 10 or 15 minutes. I'll wait till I could get the courage to go back in and get something else. It took me forever. I didn't have very much stuff, but it seemed like it took forever to get everything out of there. And I just left it all in my car because I only had like 3, 4 weeks left there. And I just stayed at my aunt's house. She had wind chimes, and so it would happen every single night. It would happen after that. But I'd start praying and it would go away. It would stop. Or I'd get up and I'd just drive around. I probably didn't sleep more than 3 hours a night for the 4 weeks that I had left there. And even I'd say a year after it happened, it kept coming on, kept happening over and over. It wasn't every night, but it was at least 2 or 3 times a week that I would have to get up and go driving or something. And the weird thing is, I moved to Yuma, and I was working for my dad at a KFC. He was part owner of a KFC store there and managing it. And of all things, right in the middle of the day, broad daylight, I was standing there breading chicken, and I got that feeling, and it started happening, and I just broke down and I started crying. And I remember my dad coming up to me and asking me what was wrong, and I told him, because I had told him what happened and everything. And his first response was that he thought somebody had slipped me some drugs or something, but that didn't happen. But he was a really tough guy, and he didn't let things scare him, or if he did, he just didn't show it. But he was also had a lot of compassion. So I remember him taking me out the back door and just sitting there with me and talking to me and hugging me and stuff and saying it's going to be okay and everything. And it was real emotional. I remember crying and everything, and he was like, "Don't worry, if you ever, you're going to be okay. You're with us now, everything's fine," and all that. And I haven't had it happen in years. I haven't had that feeling. I get chills every once in a while, but nothing like that. That was by far the worst thing that I've ever experienced. I don't even know how to really explain it other than to say that it felt like something was taking me over, and it felt like total sadness and dread. And I don't know. I'm surprised I didn't have a heart attack and die. But that was one thing that happened to me. But that's not the only thing that's happened. That's the worst thing that's happened. I've had some good things happen too. There was one time when I was slightly depressed. This was after my dad had passed away, probably 20 years after that, because my dad passed away in 2002. So about 20 years after that, I had moved to Sacramento, and I was working at my uncle's restaurant, and I was just missing my dad. I was depressed that he wasn't around. I couldn't talk to him or anything. And I remember going to bed and being all depressed and everything, and just actually praying that I could just go to sleep and not wake up. And I dreamed that I was like but I don't think it was a dream. It was way too real to be a dream. I was on a bus, and it was like at summer camp, coming home from summer camp. I was getting off the bus, and I was probably in my 30s in the dream, which I was about 41, 42 when I had the dream, but I was younger. And I was getting off the bus, and my dad was standing out there waiting for me, and he was younger. He was like the same age as me. He was like 30 something in the dream. He was like I remembered him when I was a little kid. And he was standing there waiting for me. And I got off the bus and hugged him, and I says, "I've missed you." And he says, "I've missed you too." And then I woke up. But I woke up crying, but they weren't sad tears. They were happy tears. And I think he actually came to me to tell me that everything was going to be okay in that dream. I'll believe that forever. Nothing will ever change my mind on that. And my sister had a similar experience. Well, an experience with my dad in a dream where she was walking up a stairway of like a ghetto, a really slummy, bad area, and she could feel somebody was following her. Something evil was following her up the steps, and she would walk faster and it would walk faster. And so she started running up the steps, and it was like right on her back, right over her shoulder. And she got to the door, and just as she got to the door and went to open it, it flung open, and my dad stepped out. And he said, "What do you want?" Like that, and whatever it was, took off. And my sister started crying in the dream, and she hugged my dad and says, "It's you, you're here." And he says, "I'll always be here. Don't worry, I'm always going to be here for you." So that was kind of cool. And she woke up, and I don't believe that was a dream. I believe that she was scared or nervous about something, and he was, you know, came back to tell her that everything was going to be okay. And then we've had experiences like with my aunt. My aunt was really close with my great grandmother on my grandfather's side, and my aunt was living, I think, in Denver, and my great grandmother hadn't been sick or anything. She was older and everything, but she hadn't been sick or anything. But my aunt was sitting there, and she said she smelled my great grandmother's perfume really, really, really strong. So she got on the phone immediately and called her mother, my grandmother. And she says, "Your grandmother just died, just passed away." So how do you explain that? I mean, coincidence? I don't think so. But that's just a few. That's a few more of the things that I've experienced. My mother had a dream about my dad, but it wasn't as quite as happy. But maybe it's just because he knows she didn't need him as much as we did at the time. But her dream was she was on some bleachers, like at a like a baseball game, and she was sitting there, and she looked up to the top of the bleachers, and my dad was sitting there by himself, and he like waved to her, and she was mad, wondering why isn't he coming down and sitting by me. So she walked up there, and she says, "Why don't you come down and sit by me?" And he says, "I can't stay very long. I I just wanted to come see you." And he left. And so she was wondering about that, but I think it's just because she wasn't taking it as hard as me or my sister did. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, or she just didn't need it as much as we did at the time. I had another one with my dad, but it wasn't. It was kind of funny actually, and this took place in a town we grew up. I lived in, and I didn't grow up there, but I was older when we lived there. It was Hiram, Utah. And I was driving down the street in this dream, and he had a brown van, my dad did, and he would always go to this place called the Shortstop, and he'd have coffee with all of his buddies and everything. Every morning and every afternoon he'd go there and have coffee with them. And he was like leaving the Shortstop, and he passed by me going the opposite direction in his van and waved to me, and I flipped around and went and chased him down and pulled him over. And I got out and ran up to the side of the van. And I says, "Dad, how are you doing? I haven't seen you, in a long time." He says, "I'm doing good." He says, and then he looked at me, and his sense of humor, he says, "Looks like you put on a little bit of weight." And then he laughed. And he had somebody with him. And I think it was a friend of his that had passed away a year or two before. And he says, I'm really busy. I can't talk to you right now, but you'll see me again. I'll talk to you again and everything. And he drove off. And when I woke up, I wasn't sad or anything like that. I was happy that I talked to him. But that's some of the things that have happened to me. And as far as the first thing that I talked about, I still will believe forever that unless you let it bother you, it's not going to bother you. My dad was kind of like that. He was kind of like, I don't believe it, so it's not going to hurt me. And I don't think it, if it did, he never talked about it. But I feel better if I talk about it. Another thing, and this is just going to be a short thing. Sorry I'm taking so long and rambling here. But when I was a little kid and we would go to my grandma's house, to the house where my dad grew up with his brother and his sisters and everything, they had a bedroom upstairs, and you'd have to go up these stairs, and the ceiling was really low and everything. And when we would go visit, or when we went to visit, I remember my grandmother wanted me to sleep upstairs. And I went up there, and there was just something about it up there. I didn't like it. I can't explain it. I don't know what it was. It was that kind of a feeling. And I was scared to sleep up there. So she let me sleep on the couch downstairs. And afterwards, I found out that everybody was afraid to go upstairs. I kind of think, looking back on it, my uncle, I think he might have been playing with the Ouija board or something up there when he was younger, because he would have done something like that. And my dad never talked about it, never said how he was scared or anything, but my aunt and everyone else said, yeah, that there was something up there that wasn't good. And also, one more thing. The thing that happened to me with my roommate and everything, after it was all over, my aunt pulled me aside and she told me that my roommate had told her that I was speaking in tongues. I was speaking in a different language and all kinds of stuff. So something happened. He couldn't understand what I was saying or anything, but it scared him. And I think he had some experiences afterwards too. But he's still around. Everything's good. Just wanted to share this. Just a little side note, I forgot to mention, the house that me and my roommate lived in is no longer there. The property was bought by the church, and the house has been torn down. Hope you're all doing good. And you know what? I'm going to skip a joke this time, but I'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hashtag Mean Gene, all that fun stuff. And if you like this video, tell all your friends, leave a comment down below. And if you didn't like it, then just shut up. And I will see you next time.